Hey guys, what's up? We are back once again with a college football prediction as today we're doing the Colorado Buffaloes. Hit the subscribe button down below as I am closing in on my goal of 1,100 subscribers by the end of July. We are 10 away as of this recording, so Colorado fans, can you help me out by hitting that subscribe button down below? Like the video if you enjoy it, but most importantly, leave your comments and thoughts down below. I'd like to hear what you think about this new Buffs team and where you think they will finish in a very good Pac-12 this year, where this was a 1-11 team last year, one of the worst teams in the FBS, if not the worst, in a completely different program with a completely different roster from top to bottom with all the transfers and all the people pretty much gone from last year. You're looking at an entirely different roster, an entirely different setting, an entirely different program. One final thing before we get into the video is check out College Football Roundup. It is our college football podcast channel. Me and American Football Network will have a weekly podcast where we will talk about our top 20 games. If you want to have a little preview of the podcast, you can check out last year's podcast. They're all on Spotify under the banner name The Football Expert. So let's get started and make our way over to the schedule. So as we talk about Colorado's schedule, they have a very interesting non-conference schedule this year. You have TCU and Nebraska as well as Colorado State. So with TCU, this game is a little bit interesting. I think that you are looking at a TCU team that you do have to replace a lot, but Chandler Morris at quarterback is not a terrible option. Chandler Morris last year did start the first game against Colorado. He did earn the starting job, but then ended up getting injured during the game, and Max Duggan closed out that game as well as the rest of the season as the starting quarterback. So with this matchup particularly, Colorado did play well last year somewhat. It was a 7-6 game at halftime, and it really wasn't a blowout until later on in the game where Colorado allowed 31 unanswered points to finish off the game. So it was a little bit of a disappointing game there. I think that this is a loss. I think that there is just no way you're going to be able to march into Fort Worth for the first ever time, mind you, and be able to beat TCU. I think that TCU, they're not, in my opinion, going to be anywhere near where they were last year record-wise, just because, well, last year record-wise, they went 7-1 in one-score games, and I just don't see that happening. But I do think the score will be closer. And it will end up more towards that first half score than it will the second half score, like it did last year. So I do think it will be closer, but at the end of the day, I do think it will be a loss. So now you have your first game back in Boulder with the prime era underway. You bring in Nebraska, and this is an interesting game, a game that I really went back and forth on. But when I settled and I realized kind of what I was thinking, I think that with Matt Rule struggling in his first year as a head coach almost all the time, I think that Deion is just in a better position. And I think Colorado has a program that is just – they have a lot of high-level talent like Shakur Sanders and Alt McCaskill and Travis Hunter, obviously. I think that all of these guys and even the cornerbacks on this team are just going to be ridiculous. Man, the cornerback play on this team. But I think Colorado, they are going to struggle. There's no doubt about it. They are going to struggle against teams that are very physical, but I don't think Nebraska has the bodies in order to beat Colorado this year. I think that they do get a win, especially with this game being Boulder. Then you have Colorado State, your rival in state. And I think that this is going to be a win. I don't see any issues. I think Jay Norvell, I think that he will have this program heading in the right direction because I think Jay Norvell is one of the best group of 5 coaches in the country. But overall, I do think that it is going to be a win there for the Buffs because, well, I don't think Jay Norvell has this team in the position to be able to compete with the Power 5 program, even though the Power 5 program does have a lot of new players and a lot of substandard talent in some areas. The depth is what I mean by that. Colorado really lacks a lot of depth on this roster. If anybody gets hurt, if Travis Hunter gets hurt or Shakur Sanders gets hurt, I think if Alt McCaskill gets hurt, that's fine, because I think that Dylan Edwards, the running back that was brought in as a freshman, I think he'll be fine, personally. But I think that defensively, you don't bring back a lot of returning starters. It's really kind of just an unknown, so I don't know what to expect particularly. But I do think that you get a win there. Then you head to Oregon, and Oregon is just too big, too physical, and Bo Nix is too good of a quarterback in order to lose that game there. I do think that somewhere around this schedule, I will talk about this more at the end, but I do think somewhere around this schedule, Deion upsets somebody that he's not supposed to beat, and I think that that is going to happen at some point. You'll have to see where I think that will happen, though. Then you play USC at home. This is going to be an epic matchup, even though Colorado may be 2-2 at this point, or even 1-3, or could be 3-1. They could be. I don't think you're going 4-0 in those first 4 games, though. It is going to be a hyped up matchup. If Colorado is 3-1, I expect game day to possibly be there. This is going to be a big matchup with Lincoln Riley and Deion Sanders, in a first matchup of hopefully many. I would think that this would be a fun rivalry between the two schools, because I think Deion at Colorado is definitely a place that a lot of people don't think about it, but Colorado is a place that you can win. It is a great campus. It's a great setting. People have won there in the past. Obviously, so I think that it is an underrated place that you can win at. But I do think that you get a loss there. Then you have a game against Arizona State. I think that Arizona State, they just don't have anywhere near the firepower that Colorado has. I think Arizona State's depth is a little bit better than Colorado's, but I do think that at the end of the day, the firepower that Colorado has, I just don't see Arizona State matching it. I think Kenny Dillingham was put in a really bad spot in his first year. Then you have Stanford. I think that the Stanford game is another win. I think that you're 4-3 at this point. I think that you're looking at a solid first half schedule, and where you don't play as many of the tough opponents. You play Oregon and USC. That's extremely tough, but you do get Arizona State and Stanford in the first half, and maybe you can build up some momentum there. But I do think that you beat Stanford. Stanford, I think, is the second worst team in the Pac-12 this year. Only ahead of Arizona State. I think Arizona State is the worst team in the Pac-12. I think Colorado will beat both of them because of the firepower that they have offensively, and just the ability that they just have better athletes. It's just plain and simple. Like Stanford's quarterback situation with Ari Patoa. I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if it's wrong. And even E.J. Smith, who I'm pretty sure is Emmitt Smith's son, if I remember correctly. Yes, it is. They don't have anybody that's particularly really good on the roster, and they also lost a lot of players. They don't even bring back Tanner McKee, which was a big loss for them because of last season, him contributing so much, even though it was a bad roster. Then you go on the road to play the Bruins. I think that this is a possible win. I'm going to put it as a loss, but I think that if UCLA struggles this season, if Dante Moore isn't what people expect of him, if he gets injured, or if UCLA just kind of doesn't perform up to expectations this year, which I think is possible, I do think that it is possible. And the game's coming off a bye. But the game is in Pasadena, so it's not that it's going to be a tough place to play. The Rose Bowl is a fun place to play, but not exactly the toughest. UCLA and USC are terrible about packing out their stadiums and really being a ravenous crowd like fans in the East and in the South. I'm going to give them a loss there. Then you have Oregon State. I think Oregon State, even though DJ Uiagalelei is a quarterback that definitely has struggled in the past 2 years. He is, again, the quarterback that was still one of the best in his class, a 5-star with all sorts of talent at his disposal. I think that if he was just what he was last year at Clemson, there's no reason for him not to be Colorado and to have a solid season at Oregon State, because Oregon State does have some weapons with them. And even though they did lose Mook Musgrave this year, they didn't have him for the entire season last year. So it's a loss, but it's not as big because you didn't play with them all last year. Then you have Arizona. I think that this is another loss. I think Arizona is just a better team. I think Arizona depth-wise has a lot more depth, though I do believe this game will be a shootout. Arizona's offense is going to be really good this year, but their defense is going to be trash. And I think it's going to be kind of a similar situation for Colorado as well. I think that their defense is not going – I don't know if it'll be trash because the secondary is going to be very good, but I don't know how much I trust the defensive line particularly. Then you have Washington State. I think with this being a road game and Washington State just being a solid team, I think that this is going to be a loss for the Buffs. I think that it is going to become a 4th straight loss. I think Washington State is just in a better position. They have players that have been there for longer, and I don't see Deion winning this game. It's a tough way to win on a road game on a Friday night, shortened week. That's just tough, but I do think it's a loss. Then you have a road game against the Utes. I think that this is a loss. I think Colorado finishes with a 4-8 record. But here's the thing. Hear me out with this particularly. With Colorado, you are looking at a team that is probably going to struggle at some times, and it's probably going to get blown out a few times because the Pac-12 is a much better conference this year than it has been in years past. But I do think that this Colorado team is heading in the right direction. I think with a couple of recruiting classes and beefing up the defensive and offensive lines, or at least beefing up some more skill position talent depth-wise, I think that this will be a better team, and Deion has a chance at possibly winning the conference in 2 or 3 years, in my opinion, depending on where it kind of ends up being and stuff like that. So that's going to wrap up today's video. Hit 2 videos down below and the subscribe button up here. One of the videos down below is a playlist of all of my college football prediction videos. So as always, have a great day.